A stranger arrives at a dinner party in section 29 of chapter 3. He appears in a section entitled An Extraordinary Man. This man is the one who comes to be known as Rakhmetov. He has come without an invitation. He goes to the study to see some of the great books in the study, including the collected works of Isaac Newton and a book on the Apocalypse of St. John's. Then our author tells us his story. It is, as one might expect, an extraordinary story. Nowadays, our author writes, there are only a few people like Rakhmetov. Up to the present time, I've only met 8 examples of his breed. That's a pretty exclusive group. Our author says that this select group is set apart by one trait. They are a breed apart. But our author doesn't tell us what that trait is. That is something we have to figure out. Rakhmetov is from an old family. His grandfather was with Alexander as he fought off Napoleon. The grandfather was a friend of the reformer Speransky, and as a result of his grandpappy's friendship, the grandpappy was cast out of respectable circles. Rakhmetov had inherited not a little money from his noble father. Rakhmetov set himself a mission. He came to Petersburg at an early age, and he began to make himself strong, physically strong. He worked as a plowman, a carpenter, a ferryman. All of this was before he was 18. He maintained extraordinary strength. He became legendary. He towed boats all by himself. Such extraordinary strength, he said, inspires respect and love of the common people. Rakhmetov met Kirsanov and Lupakov in Petersburg. The two gentlemen recommended that Rakhmetov read some books. Rakhmetov proved an eager student, and he would spend 2 nights reading a book until he collapsed on the floor. He would drink strong coffee just to get through the books in record time. So he was strong and dedicated and manifestly intelligent. He decided at this time to forego alcohol and to forego women. Rakhmetov had learned from these books that the great demand that all people should have is complete enjoyment of life. If that enjoyment was to come about, Rakhmetov would have to demonstrate to everyone that he did not live to satisfy his own passions, but to satisfy man in general. Rakhmetov would only eat what common people ate. He lived a Spartan way of life. He took no recreation. He needed no rest. He drove no limousine. He was a master of Russian literature and of modern economics. He read Gogol and Adam Smith and Ricardo and John Stuart Mill and Thackeray. At one point, he saved a young lady and she fell in love with him. She confessed her love to him and proposed marriage to him. But he said that he was the kind of man who had no right to marry, no matter how much it might appeal to him. He must not love. Or rather, he must not love anything but the cause of virtue and humanity. I hope you are getting the impression that Rakhmetov is good. A man who possesses and embodies all good things. That's what sets his breed apart. It is at this point, roughly in section 29 ends, that we get Rakhmetov's long visit with Vera. I relayed some of the details about this conversation in the previous video. Whereas Kirsanov and Lupakov were essential to Rakhmetov's education, Rakhmetov plays a decisive role in taking Vera to a higher level of virtue. He shows Vera the note from Lupakov. She tries to grab it, but Rakhmetov is too quick. He then allows her to read it. She is manifestly impressed by Lupakov's kindness. Rakhmetov soon tells Vera his own opinion about why Lupakov was not kind enough, and why Vera too was inadequate. Lupakov should have seen the drifting apart from Vera coming, and have taken preventative measures to keep their love from growing too intense. Vera was too taken with jealousy and dependence on Lupakov, and that needed to be cured. Rakhmetov is a perfect evaluator of human character, from the standpoint of divesting oneself of all of love of one's own. Self-interest or love of one's own pointed to private property, and it pointed to the private family. It pointed to the need for sleep and recreation and reading for pleasure. Instead, a complete dedication to a common cause was necessary. There is no indication, at least initially, that Rakhmetov would advise violence in order to achieve this new way of life. What the man is about is a single-minded devotion to the cause. That is what a fully developed human being would be. He represents this over the course of his life. A developed person should have no jealousy and should have no dependence on another. That's the new morality. This is a vision of human greatness that generally mirrors what is happening with Vera. He is an eagle, as Vera would later admit. At this point in section 31, Chernyshevsky conducts a conversation with the reader, the perspicacious reader, as it is translated. It is rather unconventional and not a little annoying conversation that has gone on throughout the book, and I had meant not to talk about it, but alas, it is necessary to say one thing. Why did Chernyshevsky introduce Rakhmetov into the narrative? It was obviously to spring the news that Lupakov was not dead. But he could have done that in any number of ways. It becomes clear, says the narrator, that he introduced Rakhmetov into the narrative for the purposes of showing us what Rakhmetov would be, what this vision of human perfection was. Here is what our narrator writes. I wanted to depict decent, ordinary people of the new generation, those I met by the hundreds. I took 3 such characters, Vera Pavlovna, Lupakov, and Kirsanov. I consider them to be ordinary people. Not ordinary, but kind of ordinary. It is not that they stand too high, but it is that the majority of the people stand too low. It is hard to see the heights of this new ordinary virtue from the God-forsaken underworld that most people still occupy. And our author developed people great. We should all try to develop, he says. Development, observe, reflect, read those books that tell you about the pure enjoyment of life and about the fact that man can be kind and happy. No sacrifices are needed, no deprivations required. They are all unnecessary to be happy. That's all. Rakhmetov is a palace. Vera, Lupakov, and Kirsanov are the houses, and the majority inhabit only a hovel. What sets Rakhmetov apart from them is his complete detachment from anything aside from the cause. Kirsanov had taken a fancy to Vera. Vera took a fancy to both men, one after the other. Lupakov found it necessary to stage his own suicide after his attachment to Vera. All these attachments demonstrate that these decent, ordinary people were not heroic, that they still had common human sympathies of the old sort. Obviously, they are way better than the majority, but they are not to Rakhmetov's level. Rakhmetov is beyond such petty attachments and attaches himself to humanity as such. No family, no property, no place, no love, no dependence, without any particular attachments that might distract him from that dedication. Our 3 characters may be on the road to Rakhmetov, but they are not there yet. If all the world were Vera and Lupakov and Kirsanov, it would be a better world than the one we have, but they would still need the education that only Rakhmetov can provide. So it is not strictly speaking as a revolutionary that Rakhmetov enters into the narrative. It is as a completion of development. The student has overcome his teachers. As part of his effort, he travels from town to town and spreads his character among others. He no doubt must be preparing a revolutionary vanguard. He certainly is concerned to spread the new gospel. And then he disappears from the book. And the last couple of chapters are about Vera and Kirsanov's life together and about the reintroduction of Lupakov. Chapter 4 concerns Vera's second marriage, and Chapter 5 is about new characters and the conclusion. Let us turn to all that in the next video.